I would very much like to, it's my great pleasure to introduce Kelly Spix-Bachman, who's the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the US Department of Energy, who's very kindly agreed to chair this opening session for us. So Kelly, please. Would care to join Kelly?
Please join me. Ulrich. If you don't mind, I'll just do remarks here. It's much more casual, much more comfortable. These chairs are pretty comfortable, actually. So, thank you. I'll try to monitor my voice a little. This seems a little loud, and I'm usually pretty loud myself. So, are you guys okay? Can you hear me? Okay, terrific. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the time to be gathered here in Denmark, and in particular for this workshop, as we are going to be diving into the critical roles that super efficient equipment and appliances will play in as our countries move down the paths to decarbonization and net zero emissions. As mentioned, I'm Kelly Spix-Bachman, and I lead the U.S. Department of Energy's efforts for energy efficiency and renewable energy, which also includes sustainable transportation, so those sustainable fuels as well. And just to start off, I would like to thank the IEA and our host, Denmark, for organizing this event. Back home in the United States, the Department of Energy is legally authorized to support appliance standards, which set minimum thresholds for energy performance of appliances. So I am really thrilled to have this opportunity to learn and to facilitate today's discussion and learn from the experts that we've assembled here. While we're going to be going deeper into electric motors and heat pumps in the subsequent sessions here later in this session, we're going to start out with this workshop by hearing from some distinguished experts who will not only represent their countries today, but also some of the world's leading forums for raising ambitions for appliance efficiency. And I'm referring here to the current leadership of forums like the G7 and the G20, and the UN Climate Conference, the Energy Efficiency Hub, the Clean Energy Ministerial, and so on and so on. We have a lot of experience and expertise represented in this first set of speakers, and only limited time, so I think we should just jump right in. Our first speaker today is Edith Bayer from India, who will be with us via virtual. And Abe is the next year's G20 president and co-chair of the Clean Energy Ministerial Steering Committee. He's joining us virtually, so I'm going to turn around here. Please, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Kelly. Good afternoon, all the delegates. Let me appreciate and compliment IEA and also the Denmark host for organizing this energy efficiency conference here. And yeah, I'm happy to join virtually. And as you rightly said, the appliances are going to play a very key role in getting us all to the net zero and all the ambitions we have committed from Paris to Glasgow and beyond. We will be doing it. So I'm heading the energy efficiency. We call it as Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the central government body who takes care of the entire energy sector. But in particular, we have been successful in launching this standards and labeling program. And this is one of the most successful program in terms of getting the consumer confidence, getting all the appliances. Now we have more than 30 appliances. We recently integrated the tires and the batteries, also battery pack for the traction batteries very early so that we can get the e-mobility in a more efficient way. Coming back to the key appliances, the refrigerators, the air conditioners, including the variable speed and also the chillers, the HVAC big installation we have included. The maximum savings we are getting from these cooling appliances. As you know, a country like India, where we are having a growing population in terms of getting the higher building stock, mostly the commercial and the residential using more and more air conditioning. At the same time, such a climate where we have a very high demand on electricity on the air conditioner. So we are getting maximum benefits, and almost now we are year on year, we are getting about 60 million ton of CO2 being saved through the appliances program alone. In addition, we have this wonderful scheme or the launch for the Ujala, that's the LED bulbs. we had maximum almost now and 160 crores. That's almost say 1.6 billion LEDs, LED lamp replaced, and now we are going to the street lights along the line. Coming back to the today's discussion on heat pumps, the motors, yes, they are going to be very crucial for India as well. But overall, I may say that these are some of the appliances where all of us, we need to work together. We need to get the efficiency of these appliances very much on higher side, motivating the designers, the manufacturers, and all the researchers to get better and better models. India has seen many of the equipments being almost efficiency doubled for last decade or so, and we found that the consumer response have been very amazing. Here, every consumer wants to actually purchase the most of the high equipments, and due to the growing demand, the cost of appliances is coming down in the market, and that gives more and more payback for the consumer. So in that regard, the manufacturers are responding positively. When coming back to the India's role as a seat co-chair and also the co-chair for the upcoming Clean Energy Ministerial, both at Pittsburgh as well as in New Delhi next year, we request and we advise all the partner members to come together, get this appliances efficiency as one of the key lever for getting all our national goals of net zero and the goals of 2030 and beyond up to the net zero in an effective manner, getting the energy efficiency as our first fuel, as rightly said by most of the countries. And we believe that appliances program is going to play a very significant role. Once again, thank you so much for inviting me here, and very pleased to join here. And we believe that appliances efficient can make a lot of difference to international cooperation. Thank you once again. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Backrey. Our next speaker is Ulrich Benterbusch, who is the chair of the steering committee for the Energy Efficiency Hub and also represents Germany in this year's G7 presidency. Ulrich?
Yeah, many thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here. And let me express first and foremost our really deep acknowledgement about what has been achieved in the framework of the SEED initiative. The Energy Efficiency Hub and the SEM are, the so-called home of the SEED initiative. We have it on our agenda regularly and inform our members about what's going on and are engaged ourselves. And we just had a steering committee meeting, which I'm very pleased ran very smoothly, with Russia as a participating country that is not self-understood. So that went well. I was really delighted because we discussed things in a sober manner, in a practical manner, and got positive results. Because one thing, I guess, is very certain. Whatever happens around the globe in terms of crises, even on war, the work on energy efficiency, the collaboration that we have in order to reach our climate goals needs to be continued. We should not shoot ourselves in the foot, by giving up these kind of international collaborations. I think that's very imperative from our viewpoint. But it's at the same time very encouraging to see that formats like the G7 that a couple of years ago others have already called outdated and ineffective are now getting new momentum and vigorous activities. And that is also seen when it comes to climate change during our presidency, where on almost all accounts the G7 have found good compromises or common denominators. One is that all of them agreed to decarbonize their electricity system almost by 35, which is of course a really big challenge, in particular also for my country, where you know that we are walking right now out of nuclear energy. We switch off the last stations this year, and at the same time the situation of course forces us to use for a short time hopefully more coal, as gas is so utterly expensive that we have a real issue short-term notice, replacing the relatively cheap Russian gas by, of course, rather expensive imports of LNG on the spot market, which, of course, is a challenge. But at the same time, you can see that the price level of fossil fuels at the moment, be it oil or in particular gas, sparks huge investment, in particular in industries when it comes to energy efficiency. So all the programs that we have in industry or with regard to residential building when it comes to retrofitting that aim at reducing the consumption of fossil fuels, they are, in demand at a level we have never seen before. We even had to stop a program at the beginning of the year because demand was so strong that it was financially not sustainable, and we had to recalibrate the program because otherwise, as a government, we would have been ripped off by our consumers because also the German government, though we are not poor, there are limits to funds available. That's certainly true. But nevertheless, it shows that the market is working with these high price levels and people knowing that there is an end of fossil fuels. They are now considering investing their private money in order to save the consumption of energy. And that is true for private households as well as for industry. And I found that very encouraging because a couple of months ago when the new government discussed the new coalition treaty, there was a debate of whether or not to increase the CO2 price. Because the old government, for the first time, has set up a CO2 price, which was good, but at a very low level. So, experts were questioning whether that could have really a steer on markets. But now the price rise in terms of fossil fuel prices is so huge that the CO2 price doesn't play a role at the moment. The investment is driven by the price signals from the market. And that makes now a huge difference. Of course, for lots of consumers of a poorer part of the society, this is a big, big burden because it's a question of social justice, if you can afford a heat bill or not. I mean, Germany is in the northern part of the hemisphere where we have rather cold winters. So the heat bill is a very substantial element of social policies. But we'll have to deal with that. In any case, it shows that markets work, and that's good to know. And with that, I would like to stop my short intervention at the beginning.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Now, our next speaker represents Indonesia, this year's G20 presidency. Ibu Puspa Dwi, I want to ask you just to start off, what role is energy efficiency playing in Indonesia's G20 presidency as we move forward, in your view, and how can energy efficiency support expanding energy access?
Yeah, maybe, thank you, Miss Kelly, and good afternoon, all. Maybe, Indonesia right now we host for the G20, and of course Indonesia is a big country and big population and big market. I think for the appliance like a topic today in Indonesia. First, thank you from the IEA support to energy efficiency. So I think right now we inform the activity of the G20. For this meeting. With the main theme of the recovery together, recovery stronger, G20 Indonesia presidency has set 3 pillars, namely global health architecture, digital economic transformation, and sustainable energy transition. And the pillar of sustainable energy transition is held under Energy Transition Working Group and addressing 3 priorities on accessibility, technology, and financing. We have done the first meeting of Energy Transition Working Group in Yogyakarta, and we will have 4 more Energy Transition Working Group 2 weeks from now, on 22 and 23 June. We will have the second discussion. In that meeting, G20 members and invitees unanimously endorse the 3 priorities in energy transition and the main agenda, heading toward the Ministerial meeting and Leader Summit in Bali. We call all these states of the road to Bali. realizing the road to Bali between the meeting of Energy Transition Working Group, we will deepen issues of energy transition through the series of virtual webinars. Today webinars on ensuring people-centered transition for all, we will become the first of them. So, whether just energy transition matter becoming key takeaway from COP26, just energy transition become the confluence between shifting toward more sustainable energy, eradicating poverty, creating decent, green, and quality jobs, and also boosting green economy. More importantly, emphasizing leaving no one behind. These critical necessities are the key to achieve Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and also prepare just and equitable net zero futures. We can also say that just energy transition will become transformational economic opportunities toward greener and more sustainable manners. However, we should reconsider that just energy transition are actually beyond economic opportunities. To the International Energy Agency, I would like to convey our presidency's highest appreciation and gratitude for taking the strategic role. IEA has established the Global Commission on People-Centered Energy Transition. The Global Commission works on recent experience and best practice from around the world to develop this transition, notes collected from international forum organizations in recent years. The Global Commission recognized that local circumstances and clean energy pathway will differ, and therefore this recommendation might be diversely applied. The Commission intends for this recommendation to influence the clean energy policies and programs of governments, financing institutions, investors, and international organizations globally, in order to maximize their benefit to people and ensure the overall achievement of clean energy transition on pathway to net zero futures. Therefore, the recommendation, practice, and experience on people-centered energy transition could become the powerful stocktake for strengthening the key deliverables of G20 Energy Transition Working Group.
Thank you so much. No, it's so interesting that although the topic of this session is about super efficient equipment and appliances, that each of you have presented on the importance of environmental justice and energy justice and affordability, which I think is just really core to the efficiency discussion overall, and has been for years, but especially more than ever now with today's global situations at hand, even more so important. Now, before introducing Christine Egan for our scene setting presentation, I would like to offer a few of my own thoughts. One thing that's clear here with these presentations is that no matter where we're from, developing and deploying these affordable, super efficient equipment and appliances really are critical to reaching our climate and energy objectives, as well as our social objectives. These appliances are important building blocks and really a baseline, if you will, for our road to net zero emissions. And more than that, they provide good jobs for folks. They provide a real source of economic value for consumers. We want to make sure that every dollar that consumers spend and every unit of energy that an appliance consumes produces the maximum work, is the most productive and the most valuable possible. And so as we're looking at the global situation and the crisis, frankly, that Europe is facing due to the impacts on its energy systems from the invasion of Russia on Ukraine, and also with the COVID-19 pandemic, this is more important than ever. In the United States, we are really laser focused on reducing costs and emissions by ensuring reliance through energy efficiency, but also energy storage and codes and standards for buildings and appliances, that building that baseline from which we can draw the super efficient appliances. Our work goes beyond research and development as well in the United States. We work with our national laboratories, our state and local governments, and business leaders at the organizational level to really share energy efficient solutions with the marketplace to get that pull. We find that partnerships are really the best way to build upon each other's knowledge. In order to deploy these innovations widespread. We also recognize and really appreciate our international partnerships, really learning from each other. And that's why I'm so honored that my organization co-chairs the IEA Technical Collaboration Program on Energy Efficient End Use Equipment, or much more easily said, the 4E TCP. And why conferences like this one are so important, to really share ideas and build upon each other's objectives. I'm looking forward to the rest of this week's participation. But at this point, I would really like to turn today to Christine Egan. She is CEO of CLASP, which is a leading international NGO on appliance efficiency. She has over 20 years of leadership, and she's grown CLASP really from a small program to an international nonprofit with offices and teams located around the world. So I look forward to hearing your insights on the achievements of appliance policy in the past decades and the opportunities to do even more.
I'm going to go over here just because if I don't, I'll surely drop the computer that has my phone. Thanks. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Naturally loud. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really grateful to the IEA for the opportunity to give this scene-setting discussion. I'll remind folks that I have the privilege of working for an NGO, so I am quite passionate about appliance policy, and hopefully a bit of that passion will come through in the talking points for today. When you read the news, there's basically an endless cacophony of natural disasters. We have wildfires in California. We see massive typhoons in the Philippines, Japan, and we see unrelenting droughts in places like Madagascar, Zimbabwe, and California in the United States. These events really do leave little doubt that the window of opportunity to prevent a climate catastrophe has narrowed significantly and may well close between now and 2030. According to the IPCC, current global commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions may lead to a temperature rise of about 2.7 degrees by the end of the century. That's a level of global warming that would bring tremendous negative consequences around the globe. And even this assessment, it focuses on commitments, which, as we all know, are several steps removed from actual implementation. But energy efficiency, and in particular appliance energy efficiency, has a track record of delivering mitigation and meaningful implementation. A recent study concluded that energy efficiency is one of the most successful forms of climate mitigation. The evaluation, which examines CO2 reductions over the past 30 years, found that energy efficiency exceeded expectations, providing 17% more emissions reductions than projected in 1989. Energy efficient appliances and equipment are critical to meeting global climate goals. Energy efficiency makes a significant contribution in the IEA's Net Zero 2050 roadmap, where these measures are front-loaded as, and I quote, they play their largest role in curbing emissions and energy demand in the period to 2030. A 2021 study by IEA 4E found that appliance energy efficiency programs reduced the annual electricity consumption in 9 countries by 1,580 terawatt hours in 2018, which CLASP estimates is equivalent to 980 million metric tons of CO2. This is a similar order of magnitude as the total electricity generation of wind and solar energy in these countries in 2018. Furthermore, long-running programs, such as those in the United States and the EU, are estimated to deliver annual reductions of around 15% of total current electricity consumption, the top 2 bars there. If a similar 15% improvement had been achieved by all countries, a reduction on the order of 2,100 million metric tons of CO2 would have occurred. Furthermore, there is ample room, and I would argue in light of the climate crisis and the threat to humanity that it represents, a moral obligation to do more through appliance policy. Just 4 categories of products, industrial motor systems, refrigerators, lighting, and ACs, are responsible for 11% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. More robust standards could have cut that in half. These efficiency improvements can also be delivered by governments and program sponsors at low cost. According to CLASP's recent pennies per pound report, the administrative costs needed to achieve a 1-ton reduction in CO2e through appliance policy are substantially below the $51 a ton social cost of carbon, with estimates ranging from less than 1 cent per ton to $1 per ton, based on recent experience. And yet, a recent CLASP study found that 50% of governments with high mitigation potential for appliance energy efficiency do not mention appliances in their NDCs. Not only is specificity crucial to meeting the pledges, but lack of inclusion further sidelines an invaluable but often overlooked tool for mitigation. And so, one of my main goals in this speech today is to draw policymaker attention and other actors to the fact that among energy efficiency interventions, appliance policy regularly delivers the most measurable and significant impacts. It was wonderful to hear from Dr. Bakre today, and I will note that in India, for example, the BEE's impact assessment for 2018 and 2019, and that's the last year for which data is available, the SNL program delivered the single largest emissions reductions within its portfolio of programs, accounting for approximately 30% of the total reductions and delivering a cost savings of $5.3 billion. In short, we are doing far too little of what we know works and what we know is easier, faster, and cheaper than media-focused solutions like hydrogen or waste energy. Priority products like lighting, cooling, motors, and heat pumps, 2 of which we'll hear presentations on later today, have massive potential for reshaping industrial and residential energy use. A global transition to LED lighting by 2025 could cut 3.5 gigatons of CO2 emissions between 2025 and 2050. This is largely front-loaded. I believe the number that I saw was 60% front-loaded with an existing, and I should note this is an existing, readily available technology that has paybacks of weeks in many cases, and it also eliminates toxic mercury from waste streams and the dumping grounds of the world's most vulnerable. Global standards for motor efficiency are already in place. Now we need to galvanize the switch to superior climate mitigating products. Motors are responsible for half of all global electricity use, and while repairability and usable life can be advantageous to business, in this case, old motors are continuously being repaired instead of being replaced with newer models that use up to 42% less energy. Space heating is the largest user of energy in buildings. With an increasingly renewable energy power supply grid, electric heat pumps have the potential to eliminate most of the emissions associated with that heating. However, they can be difficult to source and buy, as qualified distributors and installers are hard to find in some countries. They're more expensive to purchase and operate than fossil fuel alternatives as well. We can change this through utility tariff reform, substantial incentive and subsidy programs, combined with stringent energy and pollution standards. Once the true costs of burning fossil fuels are reflected in the prices, heat pumps compete. For example, Sweden, Switzerland, and France have the smallest difference between electric and gas rates. These countries also have more heat pumps than any of the others. There's an entire panel on cooling tomorrow, so I'll save my thoughts on that product category for then. But in short, projections show that rapid scaling of appliance equipment efficiency will contribute significantly to curbing emissions by 2030 and 2050. And I would be remiss if I didn't also note that these appliances increase resilience for those already feeling the consequences of a warming planet. With the timeline for action shortening, we must leverage efficient appliances to serve everyone, especially those in and under-electrified areas. And a final plea, we can't stop at energy efficiency. As we move forward, we must turn our attention to expanding access to life-changing appliances, addressing the long-term health effects of harmful materials, and innovating in the end-of-life appliance cycle. Good appliances improve processes. Great appliances improve lives and livelihoods, all while making the planet a cooler place. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. That was an excellent presentation. You've given us a lot to think about, not only for this workshop, but for the rest of this week. I think my own reflection of this introductory section was really there's three things that we've heard already today. One is about partnerships and the importance of partnerships and learning from each other. The second being really the urgency of action and environmental and energy justice, as well as access to energy. And the third really being there's such a long-term proven delivered savings from appliance efficiency that it is a really important first building block to how we decarbonize the society. And I just will add one more. I had the pleasure of visiting the Denmark Technical University this morning before I came here, and really the thoughts and the ideas behind how we incorporate and synchronize appliance efficiency with the efficiency and the decarbonization of the whole grid is really an important aspect to keep in mind as we move along. There are lines between efficiency and renewable power that have been in the past that are no longer true. We really have to take an all of the above approach to this. So thank you so much. And I think for now, we will begin to look at our first special focus on electric motor systems, the first of two, which Mel Slade from the IEA will be moderating. So thank you again for being here for this workshop. It's a really exciting day. Thank you.
Could the panel please, the people with microphones, could they come up to the stage? And if anybody hasn't got a microphone yet, could they just make their way to the back? I haven't spotted everybody. Thank you. And just explain, the rationale for how we chose the subjects for today. So we've heard from Christine and from Kelly and the other opening presenters about the urgency of action. And we've talked a lot about that this morning also, and we'll hear a lot more for the rest of this week. So we wanted to look at some of the things which could be done quickly, we think, but aren't being done quickly, and try and work out why that's the case and see what we can do, how we can advise policymakers to really step up action in some of these areas. So we chose electric motors because they're ubiquitous. About half the world's energy goes through an electric motor. And there are, very good understandings of performance of motors and measurement of their performance as well. So both performance level and measurement. So that's why we wanted to start with this product, because there doesn't seem to be an obvious barrier. So we've asked people to come and talk about incentives. How can we make those changes to the market rapidly. So we're going to open with a scene setter from Rita, who's going to just give us an overview of where we're up to with motors, and then we'll turn to the panel for their experience. So Rita, if you wouldn't mind. Sure.
First of all, many thanks for the invitation to be the scene setter for today's discussion. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I would like to start with a few slides on the topic. I was happy to hear that the International Energy Agency Technology Collaboration Program 4E was already mentioned today. The Electric Motor Systems Annex, which I'm representing today now, is part of the 4E, Energy Efficiency and Use Equipment Program. And on the next slide, or I don't have a pointer, do I? Okay. So this is to briefly introduce what the Electric Motor Systems Annex is about. The 4E Energy Efficient End Use Equipment Program comprises 15 member countries, being the EMSA member countries plus 6 other countries. And the goal is, of course, to raise awareness on energy efficient equipment, and just like within the Electric Motor Systems Annex, to share information, to initiate collaborative projects, and to exchange experience, to support good policy development for energy efficient electric motor systems. And I would like to stress systems. We will come to that in a second. So within the Electric Motor Systems Annex, we work with international standards, with digitalization of motor systems, tools and outreach. And the 9 members, you can see the flags up here, include Australia, Austria, Denmark, the European Commission, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Sweden, Switzerland as the lead country, and the US, represented, of course, by the US Department of Energy within this annex. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So first of all, we are talking about electric motors and actually electric motor systems. Electric driven machine unit is the correct wording. And I would like to stress that, so electric motor systems are complex systems. They are composed of individual components, and they are not comparable with, let's say, a refrigerator, which you can just plug out and take a new refrigerator and plug in, but it's more complex than that. So, back. Okay. So, at the core of the system is, of course, the motor itself. And then, on the one hand, on the electrical side, you have, of course, mains. Then, maybe or maybe not, you have a variable frequency drive. And then, going on, you may or may not have some mechanical equipment. For sure, you will have a driven application, like a pump, a fan, a compressor, or other. And, of course, the flow or the motion for which you use the application and the system, which should, in an ideal case, determine the whole size of the system. And the system efficiency is composed of the individual components' efficiency, and therefore it's important to work not only on one component, but on the complete system. As well, because you can reach, on average, savings on a system level between 20 to 30%. That's kind of a thumb of rule number. Rule of thumb, sorry, number. Yeah, this we already heard today. Electric motors, motor-driven systems account for 53% of global electricity consumption, trend rising. Here you can see from the different sectors the share of motor-driven systems, and of course in industry this is the largest. This share is 74%. So motors represent 74% of electricity consumption globally in industry. They are significant users, let's say, of electricity. This figure, I hope you can see it. I just want to highlight, well, up there in the red box, that motor systems can deliver savings in a cost-effective way. So this means that you actually get more savings than what you invest. The numbers in the negative mean that. And thanks to the IEA, we have some numbers for the global savings potential, which amount to 1,267 terawatt hours by 2030, which corresponds to any of the listed, meaning 150 billion US dollars in electricity costs, or 420 avoided coal-fired power plants, or the current electricity consumption of India. So this is significant. Now I would like to make the step to what Christine Egan has already mentioned today, how standards, minimum energy performance standards, can deliver savings. And this is a world map showing the level of minimum energy performance requirements for electric motors. The colors mean, of course, different levels of ambition, going from IE1, for example, in South America, to IE2, IE3 in North America and parts of South America, for example, and IE4, which is actually the highest level. And for the first time in the world, in the EU, this level will be applicable from 2023, 1st of July 2023, for the size range of 75 to 200 kilowatts of motors. So here the main message is, it's great that countries are setting minimum energy performance standards for this equipment. There are blank spots, so they should be followed up on. This table is to show that for motors, you can see on the right-hand side, 30-plus countries shown on the map before have set minimum energy performance standards. However, good news, we have international standards available for testing and efficiency classification also of the other components of the system, like the variable frequency converter. For the pumps, well, we have the testing standard. The efficiency classification standard is not yet there. For the fans, for the air compressors, we have these standards. And some regions are using them. For example, for the converters, the EU, again, the first jurisdiction in the world to set minimum energy performance standards, which are already applicable now. And for the pumps, fans, and air compressors, there are three main regions: EU, the China, and the USA, who have already set minimum energy performance standards. So they are providing good examples worth to follow. I would like to point out as well that minimum energy performance standards are moving from P, which is the product level, to EP, which is the extended product or the system level, which is actually the direction we definitely should take. And not included on the slide, but I would like to mention, is that on the level of IEC and ISO, where such standards are being set, a new joint advisory group has been established called JAG22 under the IEC, which is responsible for aligning and harmonizing those standards between the different components. So also on the international standardization level, people have acknowledged and realized that they need to work together in order to be able to deliver savings on the system level. As we all know, international standards are the building blocks for setting minimum energy performance standards in individual countries. Now, the key point today, stock of motors. I have two figures. First, I want to show the first one, which is the estimate that is available today concerning the worldwide stock of motors. As you can see, or I hope you can see, it goes until 2015. This is the most recent estimate that we have. And of course, it starts low with IE0, which is less than IE1. Of course, it's not an official category, but it's less than IE1, and a significant part of the stock was IE0, let's say. And the more recent or up-to-date data, I can only show you for the European Union. Unfortunately, no worldwide data is available. However, according to this, I think it matches quite well, so you can use the figure on the right-hand side to fill up the data until 2020. We can see that IE1 and below is still around 40% of the current stock. IE2 and IE3 comprise around 30% of the current stock. So this figure, in my opinion, also shows that minimum energy performance standards move the market, and they are effective. And now, reality. This is a picture from 4,142 electric motor systems in Switzerland. We did the analysis ourselves, and you can see the red bars. Oh, sorry, back. The red bars, they represent the expected operating life of motors. Everything below is okay. Everything above is old. So, and on average, they are twice as old as they should be or are expected to be. The last one was 64 years old, but I cut the figure at 60. On the one hand, it's great news because obviously these electric motor systems are very reliable and they work for a long time. But this is not what we want to see because every dot above the red line is a missed opportunity for decades. Now, what works? I think, and we heard from Christine as well, and I think Ms. Bakerman's colleagues are also working on that quite hard. Minimum energy performance standards are delivering. They are a must. They are number one. My slide is gone away here. So this is number one to reach a market transformation. This is the stick. And then we have the carrot, the financial incentives, which are in focus of the discussion today. And then we need something to move from the stick to the carrot, which is on the left-hand side. Information and awareness raising, energy management, capacity building, soft measures, I would call them. We need that, some people say music, to go from the stick to the carrot. Now, thanks to the IEA, we have again some numbers showing that on average, for $1 invested in energy efficiency, you will have a payback 3 times higher in energy saved over the lifetime of the equipment. And this figure shows that for different sectors, I would like to highlight electric motor-driven systems, payback $7, not 3, 7. That's a huge opportunity. What do we need for that? Of course, the spider in the net, national policymakers. They can make a difference, and they need other people to do that. Stakeholder engagement, partnerships has been said today, how important it is. Partnerships, also international partnerships, to learn from each other, but to engage the different stakeholders. The international standard makers we need to set the building blocks. We need the manufacturers who are there to deliver the highest energy efficient products. We have the industrial end users who are actually using the equipment, whom we need to help to put energy efficiency higher up on their agenda and not just the collateral of their everyday core business improvements. And I would like to stress power utilities, especially in the US. Power utilities are very active and delivering significant help in saving energy, also for electric motor systems. With that, I would like to thank and give back the word to Mel.
So thank you very much, Rita. So what we know there, what we've just been told as a refresher, is that we have all the building blocks. So what we'd like to focus on for the rest of this session is how do we change the stock? How do we change the stock as quickly as possible? So we stop talking about standards because we've got them. We stop talking about test methods, we've got them. But what is it that we can do to accelerate that turnover so that the 65-year-old motor is no longer in use? And we're told, I think it was Roberto who told me that that in most countries motors are rewound every couple of years. So we're building more and more inefficiencies into the current stock. So how do we get them out of the market? Now, we've got a very big panel and not very much time at all. So I think I'm going to just ask people to kind of give their kind of key takeaways for what they've seen works in terms of this kind of market transformation and just a little bit of their experience. And maybe we start with Roberto. Rodrigo. Rodrigo, sorry. Okay. So just what have you seen work? Can you tell us of some examples of?
Yes, for sure. You guys listen to me, okay? Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thanks for the participation here today. So for us, is great opportunity to exchange some experience here between the private and public sectors, and of course in between our colleagues here worldwide, because we are all in the same direction for energy saving. But of course, in the end, energy saving is very nice, but for the ones that are applying this, they need to see added value for that business. Otherwise, it is not their core business, so they will not apply. So some examples we are running in Brazil, and has been very successful because we implement some bonus programs, some incentives programs, which, for instance, one of them, the distribution companies, the companies that distribute electricity, together with the private sector, they provide us some rebate bonus for the ones that they want to renew their installed base. What does it mean? For instance, they go to a company, or a ESCO company goes to an installed base and make a complete evaluation, as we also do our own ESCO business inside of the company. We go there, we see what can be improved in that operation. So the company return the old motors to us, or to the electric motor manufacturer, and they got a rebate. So got a new motor, and then it was very interesting your picture here, Rita, because that's exactly what we want to do, to remove the old motors from the market, because the majority of the motors is still are IE1. Over 50% in the world are still IE1 motor. So it means very, very low efficiency. So by doing that, we could renew a lot of these old motors from stock, avoiding also to be refurbished and returned to the market again with a renewed motor, so with a very low efficiency. And of course, this helps to also to boost the energy efficiency worldwide, and actually to provide value to the business. So together with that, with financing programs, so they can even boost the companies to speed up this transition process to get the new motors or high efficient motors, because they impact less in the cash flow of the company. So in the end, again, to be green, it needs to add value to the company. And to add value to the company, someone this morning in the section said something. The customer needs to perceive they are having some opportunity there. Otherwise, the people won't change the things. So it needs to be a balance in between what we have to do, that is more sustainable world, with something that makes sense for the business. So this for the installed base. And then we truly believe that to really change from this point on is raising the bar with the energy, the minimum efficiency level. So this is the way really in one action tackles the installed base. The other one that is raising the bar to higher efficiency levels will tackle from the new products on. I think this is in general the add-ins.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Rana, UNIDO is famous for working in industry and has done lots of motors projects. Have you got some favourite examples of where you've seen the top end of the market, the more efficient motors being incentivised?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mel, for the invite. It's really great to see so many of the energy efficiency comrades and make new ones as well. As you said, UNIDO has been working with over 30 countries in emerging and developing countries on improving energy efficiency in industry, and motors is for sure a focus of ours. One perhaps example I'd like to spend a moment on is a program we've been implementing in Egypt. COP27 host on one side, but also because we've recently managed to adopt the IE3 standard, so for motors. So that was kind of a long process to get there, and I'd like to elaborate also a bit on why. Because it's in each, and that's something we need to take into account when we're working in countries where there is actually a local manufacturing base as well, because on one side you want to promote the energy efficiency and climate benefits and all that, but then there's also this economic dimension of how do you make sure that the local producer is also on board with this. So that was quite an important element that we had to look at, and we also realized that for us to advance more on putting motor efficiency on the table, or even broader energy efficiency on the table, we really need to work closer on bringing this convergence between industrial policy and energy efficiency. So if we pursue energy efficiency as a standalone is different than, working, for example, on a sectoral plan for ceramics, where energy efficiency and motor efficiency is also prioritized in the strategy for the sector. So this is one key takeaway and something that we really more heavily work on within our programs. The second element is actually more this technical capacity building, and Rita alluded to that, so absolutely thank you, systems over components. It brings almost 5 times the efficiency savings, so this is something that we also focus on, and then delivering training to help build better capacities in industry and raise awareness as well on the opportunity, because we keep on talking about it, but sometimes I feel like maybe we need to widen that circle and make more and more companies and stakeholders aware of it. And the third element is actually financing, and this is where we've been working also with the government on an assessment for how also energy service companies could get into the market and help in driving the adoption of energy efficiency and particularly efficient motors. I think also perhaps one point to bring up there is also particular in this case is the fact that industry, the pricing of electricity in Egypt has really over the past few years become sort of the market price, and that has been quite a key driver for industries to adopt energy efficiency. So really very important, and I know that IEA has done a lot of advocacy around removal of energy subsidies, but this is really a critical point for making this more of a clear business case for industries. And I'll stop here, perhaps.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you. Let's go to Sebastian, please. Another manufacturer's perspective. What have you got any examples where you've seen incentives really working to accelerate the change of stock?
Well, I mean, the best incentive that we see, and we see it on a very short notice, is the price of electricity. That is the strongest incentive that we see, clearly. But I would quickly go back to the discussion on minimum requirements, and I would like to kind of address the audience here as well and say we are ready, and I know our peers here are ready as well. Let's maximize the minimum right away. We can do it. We are ready. Bring it on, and then let's also incentivize the maximum. So those who go over and beyond and invest in the most modern, we saw here IE4 as the top level of energy efficiency. There are even higher efficiency level motors available in the market, have been already for years. So I would say incentivize the maximum here. And then the drives. Of course, we've been talking about motors, but only some 22-23% of the motors around are equipped with a variable speed drive, whereas over 50% of the application are variable speed applications where drives always deliver huge energy savings. That's a real no-brainer and would immediately have a big impact. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you say, I love that phrase, I think I'm going to adopt that, the maximise the minimum and incentivise the maximum. So, but any specific examples of that incentive that you think have been good? Anything you've seen the government do?
At the moment, I mean, there are examples of incentivizing, as we've heard already. In the case from Brazil, I think where we especially need incentivizing is to changing that old, still functioning, but inefficient installed base. Because whenever there's a green field, I think, at least this is what we see in the market, people don't buy new inefficient equipment. They buy efficient equipment. But the problem is, I guess the positive problem is that we've all made too good motors. They just last for decades and decades.
That's what you said, isn't it, Rita?
But I think that's where we need
products.
incentivizing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Good point. We're going to go now to Marie from Danfoss, a local.
Yeah, very much.
Danfoss town. And you know, any examples of incentives you've seen working, around Europe?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, this is really interesting for me to be part of, and I'm learning so much today. So let's see if I can give a little back as well. First of all, I'd like to echo what's already been said, and particularly from a colleague in ABB, price is key. That is, and if we didn't think that before, we know it now, looking at the last few months. That would really drive it. So that's one thing. But I would like to, not that we are in Denmark, sitting in wonderful Sønderborg. So I will give you an insight to a Danish project that is showing some good examples of how it could be done, or we're at least trying. Well, it's a project called the Climate Ready SME. And what it's doing is that it's pretty much doing what's already been said. It's trying to go in there with the capacity to look with consultancies in the energy efficiency, and then they help companies map savings in their production. We've seen that many times. It seems to work somehow or another. We don't know how many of them actually implemented the advice, but we know they got it and they were happy about that. But then this project stands on two legs. The other leg is they're advising them on how to communicate the changes they're making. Because we know when we ask SMEs, okay, what would be the carrots or the opportunities you see in being more sustainable and saving energy? They all say, oh, we would really much like to be able to communicate that to investors, employees, and surroundings, and everybody, actually. So it's also giving the company advice on how to communicate what they're doing. Also because we see and we hear that many SMEs, and also bigger ones, are becoming quite concerned whether they're greenwashing when they start to talk about what they're doing. But I see as the more and more this will become a market advantage, then we might want to add that carrot to the projects.
So, yeah, very interesting. So, Jalal this morning, when he was talking, made the point that people have professional communications campaigns for all walks of life, yet we do it very little in energy efficiency. And I think what you're saying there is key. And also, of course, in some parts of the world, Europe in particular, there's this very strong sense of corporate social responsibility, and that's probably a bigger driver in some cases than many others. So, yeah, thank you for that idea. Could I just go to Pierre then, please? Pierre, the International Copper Alliance has done brilliant work on motors for decades. How do you think we can change the world?
Oh, very interesting question. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Yes, we have been working a lot, the Copper Association, with the UN agencies in partnerships, which really help to deliver. Partnerships have to be designed towards one common objective rather than based on the key expertise of all the partners. And we found that this works very well. For example, in the ASEAN, we established about 10 years ago the ASEAN Energy Manager Accreditation Scheme, and we also designed to train energy managers to convince them to bring the energy efficiency topic to the board at the board level, and we found it was not sufficient, so we designed a accreditation system for the companies and the buildings. We called it Energy Management Gold Standard. So we came up with we developed that with UNEP. And we came up with 13 standard measures, like higher efficiency motors, fuel switching, etc. And we train auditors and trainers, and we worked with the certification companies like TÜV, SGS, BVQI. We had, after 1 year, 5,000 energy managers trained, about 100 auditors, and this had a lot of success because the beneficiaries, the industries and the buildings, they do not talk our language of energy efficiency experts. When we go to see them, they say, what is it for me? Motor, if it's not an energy intensive industry, the electricity cost is about 5 to 7% of total production cost. When we go with motors, improve the efficiency by 2 to 3%, of 7% is 0 point something percent of total production cost. So that argument does not speak. But when they see that if they invest, then they will get that certification, which is recognized, improve their corporate social responsibility, improve their way of doing business with the international scene, then that investment becomes very small compared to the benefits. And actually the savings become like the cherry on the cake and actually make the investment free. And this approach was very, very successful. Unfortunately, that program was stopped for some reasons, but I would like to discuss maybe later the opportunity of launching that program again. And again, the BVQI and SGS and TÜV were very, very interested in that. But what I would like to say also is that we would like to launch a new initiative on global energy efficiency for motors, and bringing all the aspects together. So we will look at policy and regulations. So we have the partnership with UNEP and U4E for the model regulations. On industry strengthening and local industry strengthening with the UNIDO, and we will be speaking with ABB as well. On end users creation awareness, and that energy management gold standard could also support that. On motor repair, I would like to say that this is critical because we found in our experiments that if the motor repair practice are not up to standards, the motor being rewound will lose 2% efficiency point. So what the graph you have seen with the average and so many motors, 40, 60 years old, we found also 40 years old motors in China in the factories. They are being rewound every 2 years. Every time they lose 2 percentage points. So even if the IE3, IE4 motors come in, they will be repaired. That's a normal practice. And if we don't get those motor repair practices, and it takes only 2 days of training. There is no impact on the bill of material, no investment required. So in China, we work with the CINIS, and we got the CINIS to adopt a national standard for motor repair. And we work with NDRC to get an accreditation system for motor repair workshops and an incentive program. And this worked very well. So this is something that at the International Corporate Association we know how to do. And this energy efficiency global motor initiative, so we are discussing with Melanie and with Rana, we have U4E and ABB, so we would like to be confirmed, of course, to talk about it again in Copenhagen next week, but our idea is to launch that initiative at the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I'm calling for all people interested, organizations, to contact either myself or Mel to join our partnerships. Again, we would like to cover every aspect. And financing, next week we will be discussing with the finance community. We realize also that money is there. The trouble is that projects do not meet the due diligence criteria. So we will be discussing next week on maybe having a new initiative, energy efficiency financing market readiness initiative to help with technical assistance, project developers to have the feasibility study properly done and to meet the due diligence criteria of the financing community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Jalal, I know you're sitting down there all lonely. Is there anything you would like to add to this conversation? Anything that you've seen particularly successful in terms of trying to change this stock over?
Yes. What just I want to say, I don't know if you hear me well. Okay. So what I'm saying that for sure there is a lot of opportunities in on the high efficient motors, but the implementation is still facing a lot of problems for rolling out really big problems. And this morning I was talking about the Super ESCO. In fact, one of our objectives also is to create the ESCOs, is to support the implementation of high efficient appliances, especially in the industrial sector. As you know, they will not bring only changing motors. No, they will offer more services, as like I said this morning, the financing, they can provide financing, but which is more interesting, they can provide technologies, because as you know, we are not changing motor by motor, but we are optimizing also operation. We are optimizing energy consumption. So there is an added value on just motors, but as a complete service, they also can provide the maintenance, which is a good part. However, it was said this morning that it's not so easy to work on in the industrial sector. It's a complex, and where difficulties is to measure the real energy savings that will say it's achieved by these motors. It's a little bit complex, but that does not mean we cannot do it. It can be done. And that's why working with the ESCOs, that they will know really how to demonstrate the savings, how to offer the service, and also how to bring financing, because this, as I said, some of the companies, maybe they don't understand what are the benefits from doing it. What you have shown today with the life expectancy of the motors, it's really very interesting, because the more we have this extended life, it is the best for the life cycle cost to show that, yes, it's better to invest now in high efficient motors rather than the standard ones. You have asked what we can do as incentives. It's simple. Just to add additional taxes to the old version to at least to be the close to the high efficient one. There is many other options. Government can also be a partner on that by providing some incentives, financial incentives, or at least fiscal incentives for that. There is many options, but at least from our side as the African Development Bank, we are looking also to supporting industries, first for capacity building, and also even on the private sector through some technical assistance to put in place programs for that. It could be even manufacture, that we can support them with technical assistance, or local financial institution if they want to have a dedicated line of credit for potential sector or for the entire sector. So we are open, we are monitoring also the needs of the countries, and we will be happy also to collaborate with the ongoing activity, especially UNIDO, for the implementation of high efficient motors in the different countries.
Thank you very much, Jalal. We're pretty much out of time, but I just want to do a couple of things. Rodrigo, if you could ask governments for one thing in just a few seconds, what would it be?
Well, I would say firstly that definitely what we need to do is to raise the bar to high efficiency products, as our colleague just said. I think the technology is there. There is no barrier for the technology, and then including digitalization, that is important for, depending on the country, this will help a lot to even the ESCOs to get the job done. And of course, by the ESCOs to really tackle the installed base, that I think is dependent only on us setting regulations for the new motors, and including, for instance, set a deadline for the old ones could be the fast action to tackle to improve the energy efficiency worldwide.
So actually, a deadline and a target.
Deadline, the targets, yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And ABB, Sebastian, would you agree with those? Would you add anything else to that in terms of what you'd ask for governments?
Yeah, I think it's easy to agree. Set the bar high. We are ready. Of course, we need to continuously innovate and push the boundaries. It's not a question of complacency here, but those products already exist. So we should do that. In the broader really sense, what will, in my opinion, be needed at the end is carbon tax in one way or another, which is a level, from a competition point of view, a level ground, and it will put a price on pollution, and as already discussed, cost drives these transitions more efficiently than anything else.
So everybody heard, set the bar high, okay? No, we have it officially from two of the biggest motor manufacturers in the world. There's a hand up over there. Sorry, I can't see very well because of the lights, but would you like, we've got really quick because we're out of time, so if you just...
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to share a small experience in terms of motor, for example. Maybe I just want to share the experience we are doing with UNIDO to promote the energy efficiency with efficient motors. For example, we are combining both the ISO 50001 and the ISO 14000 series in the industry. So in that case, the greenhouse, the GCL program will come into it, and it's really motivating the industry. We're having a pilot project. I think that will be a kind of innovative approach when you really want to involve the industries in the energy efficiency sector, combining both the ISO 40000 series and the ISO 50000 series. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And gentlemen here, sorry, again, like I say, I can't see a thing.
Thank you. Erik Hubert is my name. I have worked with motors for years, and for the last 4 years I have been Chief Technical Advisor of the TEMOD program in Turkey. I think there's something that hasn't been stressed here, and that is that motors are always oversized. So when we are talking about improving energy efficiency and you are making the business case for the company, then you should remember to put the right motor in place, and thereby you will increase efficiency, because if the motor is not loaded well, then you could go down the efficiency curve. And that's very important. And then also the supply chain. I mean, it's easy to say that people should buy motors, but in Turkey we couldn't get them. So a lot of companies, they were buying IE2 because they couldn't get IE3.
We should change
cards.
Yeah.
There's a bidding competition going on now. I like this. This is
also,
going really well.
when you're sitting up there, I'm thinking, well, reality is out here. In Turkey, inflation is around 30% at the moment. So there's lack of money. So maybe we should also think of how can we improve what they have, like they have done in Egypt, where they have teach people how to rewind motors in an efficient way, so they could live a little longer. I know that's not the best thing, but that is better than nothing. And then also train people in how to analyze a motor system. And there has been developed a guide in EMSA, how to audit motor systems in the right way and make sure that fans and motors have the right size and thereby improve energy efficiency. And I will be a little more, not so modest that like you, Richard, you said 30%. I have seen cases up to 40% increase in system efficiency.
Well, it's an average.
Yeah. So there's a huge opportunity. And another thing is that hasn't been mentioned here is, and that is one of my, lovely things, always remember the non-energy benefits. When you are buying high-efficient motors, you get motors with better bearings, they live longer, they have less noise, you have less breakdowns. I know motors are living long, but still you have motors that break down, that is why they're rewound. So if you buy high-quality motors, less breakdowns, more efficient production, that is the non-energy benefits. So include them too. I know that Rita also have a beautiful spreadsheet and also a documented folder about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to have to stop here. One more, okay, but very quick, please. Otherwise, Edith, who's moderating the next panel.
Thank you very much, Mel. My name is Hubert Zhan from Ghana Energy Commission. And a nice presentation just to talk about the policy point of view, what Ghana is doing. We have adopted new regulations, which includes energy efficiency for electric motors, and as well as 17 new appliances. And so there is a business case to be made. As a country, we are setting minimum performance standards for the electric motors, as well as prohibiting the importation of the used ones. And so this is what government is doing as far as Ghana is concerned, and I thought I would mention to you about it. He mentioned about availability. We have set the minimum performance standards, but if the products are not available, then I'm afraid we have a long battle to serve. So the business community can look at this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so you have two people here from manufacturers who want to talk to you as well. So I think we could carry on for quite a while, but we have to stop. I'm sorry to the panel that you didn't get a chance to speak more, but it shows the interest in the topic and the importance of the topic. And this is a subject that we at the IEA would like to continue discussing in the coming months, leading up to hopefully the launch of the initiative that Pierre's talking about. We can't just have a meeting like this and think we've had a nice chat and walk away. We have to do something with this. We have to have this stock turned over. And we have to work out how to do that and what recommendations to give to government. So from my perspective, this is just very much the start of that conversation. So thank you, everybody, for your presentations, and we'll hand over to the next panel.
Great. Yeah, I think thank you. The main thing is if you what do you want to get out of these type of discussions? And if I wanted, I'm here to listen a bit, not to.
If you take this one here.
Yeah, but
yes, a couple of pictures.
To have a
And I have pictures
kind of have a chat. Yeah, exactly.
What's
working in your country? People don't want to know what I know. They want to know how we
place
do it.
do you want to see somewhere?
I agree.
Okay. Oh.
Do you have any preference?
Do
you want to go boy, girl, boy, girl? That's next to you, because you have an orange.
Yeah.
Orange
Good choice.
Oh, maybe I should have. Totally. Well done.
Well,
I'm serious.
Yeah, okay.
I'm serious.
Good.
Sorry, I wouldn't dare, but.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to make sure you wouldn't dare.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if everybody can please take their seats. It's a very brief break because we're a bit behind schedule here. But I promise that this will be a very exciting panel, where we're now shifting to another very important and timely topic, which is that of heat pumps. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then I'm going to introduce the panel, just to let you know who we have here today. And then we're going to have a conversation, much like the last panel. So that's the format. So just by way of introduction, I'm Edith Bayer. I work at the IEA. It's a pleasure to be here, of course. And I just want to say a few words about why we're talking about heat pumps today and what the importance is. One is decarbonization. The IEA came out with a net zero roadmap last year. Electrification is a key mitigation action, and heat pumps, particularly today, we're focusing on buildings in particular, are absolutely crucial. In the net zero scenario that the IEA developed, we go from 180 million heat pumps globally to 1.8 billion by 2050. So that's really, and that would be half of heating supplied by heat pumps. So they really play a very, very important role in the net zero scenario. Today, we also see the growing importance of heat pumps in terms of energy security. In Europe, in particular, there's really a discussion now about how to get off Russian fossil fuels, how to heat buildings next winter and in winters moving forward. So that's a very important part of the discussion. And of course, energy efficiency is crucial. Improving the efficiency of heat pumps in a sector where, in contrast to motors, does not have the standardized global energy efficiency performance standards, the testing standards. So we're in a very different position from the last panel in that sense. And finally, two more points. A crucial one that's come up a few times today is that the customer experience really matters. And I hope that we'll touch on this today, because in the end, if customers get shoddy heat pumps and other people hear about it, it's going to be very difficult to reach these objectives. Another thing that I hope we touch on is that this is unlikely to happen alone. So what do we need to actually achieve these objectives to really ramp up the role of heat pumps? So we have an excellent panel here today. We have Thomas Novak, who's the Secretary General of the European Heat Pump Association. We have Guro Solem, who's the CEO of WINS. We have Caroline Haglund-Stignor, Assistant Manager at the Heat Pump Center at RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. Stephen O'Connor, Managing Director at Electric Ireland Superhomes, and last but not least, certainly, Nigel Yollens, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you all today. And I'm going to start, not in the order that I just presented everyone, but I will start with Thomas. And Thomas, I'm going to start with a selfish question. So I mentioned the IEA scenarios and the IEA objectives. And from the Heat Pump Association's perspective, could you comment on whether the value chain is really ready to deliver?
Yeah, thank you, Edith. That's the question that everybody would like to be able to answer. And last year, I would have said absolutely no problem, and we can do 20% and 30%, and there's no issue because everybody is prepared for growth. Then came the war, then came the wake-up, which really served as a wake-up call to everybody. And you could say that all the points, the benefits of heat pump technologies were known before that. But out of a sudden, it makes sense economically. It makes sense. We have heard that before. Increased the electricity price. Now the spark spread between electricity and gas has decreased, so it becomes much more interesting to have heat pumps, and everybody wants one. And if you would call, I dare say pretty much in every European country, you call your installer and say, I would like to have a heat pump, they start laughing and say, you should have called half a year ago. And it is really a combined, it's a triple problem. It starts with all the components that are still in containers in Shanghai. It continues with the semiconductor manufacturers that haven't seen heat pumps as a relevant technology, so they felt that this is too boring. But we have heard in the session before that it's not a heat pump, it's a complex electric motor-driven system, because we have pumps, fans, and compressors, and all of them need semiconductors. That's the second. And then the third, of course, is everybody else hoped that the industry would deliver, the value chain would function. The value chain is now global. So all these things create disruptions, plus some of the material comes via or over the Ukraine, and it's not delivered that way anymore. So I'd say at the moment the value chain is not ready for this demand, and that's what you see. That is the frustration that everybody feels, that people say now we are in a situation where demand is high, but we can't deliver. But I do think that the component part of it can be solved within the next, let's say, 2-3 years. But that seems to be that the reaction time that people have. And so I think overall, in the long term, I'm quite optimistic.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe one thing, installers are not the problem. If anybody says we have an installer problem, installers are not the real problem. We have more installers than we need. We just need to tell them install heat pumps and not kitchens and spas and bathrooms. Yeah.
Or maybe install heat pump while you do that spa.
Yes.
So I'd like to turn to Stephen now and go from kind of this the big picture that you just laid out in terms of supply chains and the value chain, and go to the experience in Ireland and whether the policy environment is supportive to reaching these kinds of objectives and what might be.
The policy environment in Ireland has matured greatly in the last year, I'd say. It's taken us about 10 years to get a really good, mature kind of energy efficiency policy landscape. What we have now, we have good legislation, good policy, cross-party support. We have multi-annual funding. And that's split between, we have consumer grants available from the government, and we have the start of good consumer finance products of low-cost loans for people doing this work. So all of those, that's all in really good shape. That's taken about 10 years. I'm not going to kind of underestimate the effort that has taken in that. And it all got launched kind of with great fanfare in February earlier this year, where we had the new grant system for the consumers. And also for the supply chain, it's really good because now the industry has multi-annual certainty, and they can invest in hiring staff. I mean, you know, I was interested around, Thomas, you were talking about the value chain. The value chain for us isn't getting equipment. The value chain is people. The value chain for us is installers. We've got an awful lot of demand in Ireland. And by the way, we've got a lot of work to do. You know, about 75% of the housing stock in Ireland is oil or gas. So we've got a big job on our hands. And we've got all the policy stuff. We've got the consumer demand. It's not perfect. We've got to do a lot of education. But the issue for us is actually the rollout and the implementation of all the plans. And we need to stop people building new houses and installing spas and kitchens and get, exactly as he said, we need to get them installing heat pumps and doing the insulation works around them.
Yeah, thank you. So to get another business perspective, I'll turn to Guro. Could you please comment on what, in your views, the obstacles are to accelerate the rollout of heat pumps?
Yeah, I think I need to start with this green transition, and that everybody's working on this, and all of the countries are trying to contribute on how we can cut emissions. And I mean, currently in Norway, we're, for example, electrifying our oil and gas rigs just to have the cleanest possible gas, and all of these initiatives are really good and important. However, I do actually believe that the cleanest form of energy isn't necessarily hydropower or hydrogen or wind or sun or batteries or heat pumps for that matter. I actually do believe that the cleanest form of energy that we have is humans' will and strength. And it's people that's going to drive this change. And we need to embrace these companies. And we need to make sure that people in these companies are given an ecosystem that they can operate in. It needs to be more accessible with capital for growth companies, because we're talking about existing products and technology, and the value chain might currently be a little bit off the road. But we are talking about making new business models, probably, on something that is already here. The market is here, and the product and the technology is here, but we need to roll it out. So in addition to the initiatives and sanctions that are being mentioned and are probably going to be touched upon several times tomorrow as well, we need clearer requirements to financial institutions. And we need more support of solution companies directly contributing to emission cuts.
Thank you. So let's turn to Sweden, who has experience actually undergoing this transition. In Sweden, I understand that 60 to 70% of detached homes are heated with heat pumps today. So could you talk a little bit about that experience, what the factors are behind the success, and also, is this a country-specific example, or is there something that we can draw in terms of learnings in other places?
Yes, thank you. Yes, first of all, in Sweden, the carbon tax was introduced already in 1991. And this, together with rising oil prices, relatively low electricity prices and moderate tax levels, it actually resulted in that clean heating by heat pumps was an economically attractive solution for the end consumer, even though it involved a considerable investment to switch to a heat pump. And secondly, really early, the Swedish Energy Agency, they organized a technology procurement competition. This spurred industry and educated industry as well, and also created awareness. A third action made by authorities at an early stage was to organize independent third-party testing of heat pumps and to publish results together with information about the technology in a way that end consumer could understand. This spurred industry to develop even better heat pumps, and it also created awareness and consumer trust in the technology. And finally, the Swedish Energy Agency has funded research programs for heat pumping technologies continuously since the 80s. It's also important. And the funding scheme was designed in a way to encourage tight collaboration between industry, research institutes, and academia. So is it anything that others could learn from this? And first of all is that the technology works. It keeps millions of homes warm, not at least in the northern part of Europe. It's important to mention that. And secondly, often more than one policy measure is needed to transform a market. A combination is needed. And in order to understand what is the missing part, a strong, good dialogue between industry, policy, and research institutions is important, because different things will be needed in different markets. And then thirdly, make clean heating the most economically attractive solutions for end consumers. Internalize the cost of CO2 emissions and fossil energy, rebalance electricity taxation, remove VAT on heat pumps and electricity to drive it. You know, if policy wants an acceleration, show long-term ambition, and don't forget information to create awareness and confidence, and finally, continue to support research and development programs for the technology and the adjacent systems.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we would agree on this need for really a policy package, and I think you've touched on some of the main elements of what that would include. So let's turn now to finance, which has come up a couple of times so far. Nigel, could you comment on what the motivation has been for the EBRD's focus on financing energy efficiency, and then go a bit more into heat pumps specifically?
Sure. So let me just start with a question to the audience. How many people here are from banks? 1, 2 people, right? 2 people from banks or financial institutions. When 2005 was the Glen Eagles G8 conference, as it was then, the EBRD's response as part of the plan of action, and I know that the IEA was also involved in this, was to develop our sustainable energy initiative. And it was a response essentially to the problem that there was a huge need for finance, right? We're talking about heat pumps, talking about motors, and the IEA says how much finance is needed per year by 2030. Anyone remember the numbers? I think it's like 1.6 trillion for energy efficiency. Did I get it right, Mel? Something like that. A lot of money, right? And in the conversation, everyone talks about the need for finance, and yet how many people in the room from financial institutions? Not many. So the EBRD saw itself as a multilateral development bank, as trying to provide some kind of leadership in that space, even though we're a relatively small bank. Funnily enough, fast forward now to 2022, we've done 26 billion euros of investment in energy efficiency alone. In our intermediated finance, that's one of the products that we use, where we lend to smaller banks who then on-lend to the smaller things. We've done about 6.2 billion euros across 270,000 energy efficiency investments. These are little things like 2,500 euros for a heat pump. In that, the interesting thing though is when we get to the heat pump part of our business, so of that 6.2 billion, about 680 million is in heating. And have a guess how much of that is in heat pumps. Less than 10%. So you start going from this big number on energy efficiency down to heat pumps, which we've just been talking about as being the savior of our planet. And you can see that we've got very little in the way of investments. I think we've done about 80 million euros across, just trying to dredge up the numbers, across 35,000 heat pumps in that product. So it's very, very small. And the question is, why is that? I think the first thing is there are not more banks out there selling this kind of finance. The second thing is the price of electricity has been mentioned before. In a lot of our countries that I work in, electricity is heavily subsidized, and there are riots when you don't subsidize it. So there's a political economy element. And the third part is, I think it's to do with treating individual solutions like heat pumps as kind of one part of the whole system. There's no point putting in a fancy heat pump into a building that's poorly insulated, because you're wasting your time. And so a lot of the work that we do on these credit line facilities is working with a client to say, look, you shouldn't really be investing in a fancy heat pump at the moment. You really need to put some insulation around the building envelope. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question, which is kind of turning to the policy side of things? What's really missing right now from your perspective?
Yeah, when I worked at the IEA, I coined this phrase. Well, the phrase that I use a lot now is investment grade policy. And this is a phrase that I think is really relevant, because what I mean is policy that's been developed with a thought for the bankability of the actions that follow. So often, policy wonks like us get in a room like this and we talk about MEPs, we talk about IE4 and IE2 and so on, and we all know what the answer is, and yet in the room there are not enough people who are selling this finance. How many people here have a loan with a bank? Just how many people? I mean, banks are everywhere, whether you like it or not, right? And banks, we're always talking to banks. If we could get banks, and this is what we try to do in our credit line facilities, is train up the tellers and the guys, people who manage these portfolios and products within a small local bank. When they see a client and someone says, I want to buy a new car, they say, well, have you thought actually about not buying a new car, but you know, your house, you've got a gas boiler, or in our case, a lot of coal-fired boilers. Have you thought about this new product that's on very cheap interest at the moment to put a heat pump in? And if we can get the financial institutions marketing this stuff, where these people are writing the checks, then I think we'll have make a big difference. And if those people are in the room, coming back to your policy question, if those people are in the room to help develop the policies, then I think our policy mix will be a lot better.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so that actually leads me to a question for Gora, which is, so there's been a lot of success in Norway with heat pumps in households, but do you have any comments on kind of how to expand the outreach, including to industry, into commercial buildings?
Yes, I do. I think, well, first of all, we need to make sure we tap into existing buildings. Okay, so some kind of scheme is necessary there. We need something with all technology for all buildings. That is not something that we have in Norway, and which means that heat pumps for commercial buildings are much lower than for the consumer market. In addition, I am a strong believer that we actually have to offer these heat pumps as service, and this is where the financing part plays a really important role again, because we need to overcome the huge market obstacle of the investment cost. So we need to, from the corporate side, we actually need to take more risk and offer it as a service, and we actually know how we can do that. Because we are the ones that are technical competent on this, so we can actually make them profitable as well. It doesn't have that long payback time. But as it stands now, we actually use too much time struggling to get the financing for setting up these kind of funds. So even though the banks are moving, and I mean, we have really good bank alliance with the Norwegian biggest bank, but they actually still have to seek security from the government when they're going to do these kind of things. So having the funding to do this is also really important.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to go back. Well, not back, but I want to step again towards the kind of policy and regulation side with you, Caroline. So, I mean, even from the customer perspective, if we don't have the right standards in place, we could run into problems in terms of the quality of appliances or of heat pumps, them not being as efficient as they could be. There's an important role here for regulation. Could you comment on some of your thoughts on kind of which elements you would prioritize in your view, and where you see regulation should be going?
Yeah. First of all, we need standards and regulations, maps, regulation things to rate energy efficiency. It's important, and also sound levels important, and that already exists in several markets. We have it in Europe and in US and several countries and in Asia. So that's the first step, and that those comparative. Those independent tests I talked about, that was before we had that regulation scheme in Europe. So that's the first thing. Then I also believe that we need harmonized common standards for communication protocols for heat pumps in order to be able to harvest the full potential of flexibility and energy efficiency, to make the appliances possible to communicate with a grid or the management system of the building. Then also we need standards somehow to develop heat pumps that are easy to install and to commissioning. I think that is really important.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned flexibility. I'm going to turn back to Thomas, because there is an important role here, isn't there, for heat pumps in terms of flexibility. So, you know, the one fear could be we put all these heat pumps on the system. The same fear comes up with electric cars, doesn't it? That we're just going to overload the electricity system. We won't be able to handle it. So can you comment on kind of those dual points of the role of flexibility? We know that the demand response market, for example, is terribly underdeveloped right now in Europe, for instance.
We can actually connect a few of the points that were raised also, because heat as a service will not run if you don't give a value to flexibility. So this is as simple as it is. And we have in Europe at least, and I would advise any country in this world to follow suit, but to do it a bit better, we have an electricity market design directive which is not properly implemented. And if you ask the European Commission today what's the implementation status of that directive, they can't tell you. I have tried it, you don't get a proper picture. And then you ask why, because this would be so logical that you say if we have this bump in the middle of the day where electricity is dirt cheap, probably even too cheap really to meter, as we have wanted it all the time, but we have no mechanism to make use of that electricity. So that needs to change. Shift from the evening when all the Brits put on their kettle and charge their cars when they drive home to the midday. I don't know if you can have the tea for such a long time, but nonetheless, that would be something. Then on the grid itself, I'm confronted with that and have this rejection curve of heat pumps. They don't work in renovation, they don't work in industry, they don't work in district heating. And the last one is they're too expensive. And if that is overcome, then the grids will fall. We talk to the utilities, to the DSOs, and we ask them, so what's the situation? Because you will have to eat that soup if it doesn't work. And they answered to us, and that's in writing, so I can send it to everybody that wants to hear it. This is not a problem. We just need to know early. So what we need is technology clarity on behalf of the governments. They need to say, guys, in heating, the best available technology, and I come to Caroline here, is the heat pump. We have defined it. Eco-design in Europe says that very clearly. It's undisputed. So we will give this technology a preference. We will declare it system critical. We will create heat pump accelerators that bring everybody on board and create these packages that you mentioned. So technology clarity, and that will also be given to the utilities and to the providers of grids. And we tell them, you have to change, because every house in a street will have an electric car charger and a heat pump and a photovoltaic. Do you have that in mind? Create legislation around these electric buildings that are nodes in a supergrid. I mean, Superhomes Island has just renamed itself, I think, for exactly that purpose, right? So if we do this, then the grids will adjust and we will not have a problem. If we wait until 2030, we will be in for a big surprise. So it's really a question of planning. And one last thing on the investment, I wanted to ask you, Nigel. Are you really focusing on the right level at the moment? Because maybe we need, if we want to do what Edith said, these 1.8 billion heat pumps, we need probably 5, 10, 50 factories per year. What's your offering to the industry that has to do these investments? Thank you.
Can I respond?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. So you're dead right. And so interesting, last week, the bank's president, Odile Renaud-Besseau, so my bank's president, met with Fatih Birol. And some of you may know who he is. And they discussed a potential for us to work on a very important topic called heating, and in particular heat pumps, and specifically in the area of supply chain and the need for financing, manufacture, and skills for SMEs, particularly in that space. And this is something that we've identified as an important area where we already have products for that. So we do direct lending to SMEs and to major corporates. However, we don't have let's say, as a bank, we don't have a coordinated product focusing on this panacea, the heat pump. And so this is something that we hope to work with the IEA on. But you put your finger on an important point.
Thank you. So let's turn back to Superhomes for a moment. Ireland has set some ambitious targets, hasn't it? So, just based on the conversation that we've had so far, what do you see as the biggest barriers, the biggest issues, and anything that Ireland is doing that we should take note of to address some of these issues?
Well, I guess firstly, I mean, I'm an operator in the market. My job is to sell heat pumps in a kind of an integrated package to residential customers who are looking to deep retrofit their home. So that's what I'm doing. Government's jobs, obviously, is to set targets, and government has set targets that I think are incredibly ambitious for us, and that is to roll out heat pumps to 25% of the housing stock between now and 2030. Now that to anybody in the industry in Ireland, everybody is looking at that going, how are we going to do that? But then I come here and I listen to Caroline and Guru at the end here. I'm hearing Norway at 50% or Sweden at 50%. And I'm actually remembering why you go to conferences, because you come and you meet people and you actually hear things and you go back and you think maybe we can actually do this. But I think, look, a lot of stuff has to happen here. We've got to there's a huge job around actually consumer education. And I think you were saying at the end, all these reasons why heat pumps a problem. Consumers aren't familiar with this technology. They're familiar with an oil boiler and a gas boiler. They understand it. They've had it forever. Electric heat pump, they don't understand it. They don't know what it is. It looks very complicated. Their plumber might not fancy it. Their architect says it's too difficult. It's going to be expensive, and sure isn't electricity going up and we'll overload the grid, and it doesn't work in cold weather, and I don't have underfloor heating, I've only got radiators. So you've got to work through and debunk all of these myths. So it's actually like, I work for a company I lead a company that is a technical company, But actually the communication part, the consumer communication and retrofit advisor part of that company, I think has the biggest job, because we are trying to convince a lot of people who are slow to move and adopt to go down this road. And if we get that right, you know, and then I'll work on the supply chain and the contractors. But if I can get the consumer kind of awareness and engagement right, that's a huge part of it.
Gaurav, so that leads to another question for you, which is you're transforming from being a refrigeration company to an energy company. So can you comment on this customer side, perhaps on the finance side as well, and just the reasoning behind this shift?
Well, yeah, back again to overcoming the investment cost. Firstly, is due to that, we have to overcome the investment cost issue of the customer. Okay, so in order to get more heat pumps out there, we need to offer them without this investment cost. Okay, and I also mentioned that we can do that because we know the systems and we know how to make them profitable. So we know how we can overcome some of the issues that we're highlighting here now. What we've done in Vince is that we have established a company, Vince Energy. We've been able to, I think, attract an ecosystem of risk takers. I have shareholders taking a lot of risk, employees. I mean, it all started with some founders as well. We're a scale-up company, so I mean, we have executives taking a lot of risk, and board members, and even financial institutions taking a lot of risk. But it's the only way we can actually overcome all of these obstacles, and we need to start looking beyond the obstacles. There are plenty of obstacles, and I'm in the same position. I'm out there as a CEO, and I'm talking to customers, and all of these obstacles come to my table. And a lot of my work is actually behavioral change from the customer side. So to overcome those obstacles, we just we need to assume more responsibility, and knowing that we can make it profitable, I think we will be able to do that. But there's a lot of risk involved. So some market drivers on one side with some incentives and sanctions, and at least that we have some kind of idea on what these emissions are going to cost these buildings. Because the buildings owner, they really want to know, but they don't know. They don't have the knowledge to take that decision. Would be really good. So the market drivers on one side, and the other side just trying to support companies breaking new grounds, as well as bigger companies and manufacturers and the whole value chain.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, a question for Nigel then. I mean, to what extent are you seeing, or how do you see the risk of, because there is a good deal of risk in the business models that are coming up to actually deliver this, but there's also a big opportunity.
Yeah, interesting. You know, when we go to talk to smaller financial institutions that we lend to in this credit line facility, their immediate response is energy efficiency. We're talking generally energy efficiency, not just heat pumps. Energy efficiency, got no idea what it is, sounds very risky to us, not interested. And then we somewhat open our books and show them, for this 26 billion euros that we've done, we have an NPL, a non-performing loan ratio, that is way lower than any other part of our business, the bank's business, and we do about 10 billion a year. Energy efficiency is the best performing part of our portfolio. And the reason is because when you invest in energy efficiency, we know it, right? You save money, and therefore it's easier for them to pay us back. As soon as we start showing them these numbers, they're like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe we should give it a go. Just a little bit, mind you, so they'll take on a little bit. I mean, okay, we were very active in Ukraine, not so much now, as you can imagine. However, we have stories of these banks who would take on the first credit line, and we would go back to them when that had exhausted and said, look, we've got some more money for you. And they're like, no, sorry, too busy. We've got our own money we're putting into this now. And off they go. And so those sorts of things are real success stories, I think. It's around in this, and I assume the whole heat pump thing is the same. If you go to a standard bank manager and you talk to them about selling these heat pumps, they got no idea what you're talking about. They know how to finance cars, refrigerators, and new homes. Heat pumps, forget it. And bankers are pretty kind of simple, risk-averse people, right? They don't like anything that's too complicated.
I'll leave that one hanging. So Thomas, I want to turn to you for a moment and just get your view. So you mentioned the barriers in terms of the supply chain and the need to ramp up. So do you have any kind of quick messages for us regarding fast action? You know, what can we do quickly? And what can't we do quickly?
Well, nothing we can do quickly, and then we can quickly start thinking about the future. This question would have been great 5 years ago. Then we would have had great solutions for this winter. But of course, there's another winter and another winter and another winter. And so the key message should be that we have to take this serious. I mentioned technology clarity. I really think it's an important point. We have hoped that the markets would solve everything. But I think now is the time to say we have enough evidence to say a large part of these markets, and as examples have been shown, could be a large part of heating and cooling can be provided by heat pumps. And I mention heating and cooling because one of the things that you can indeed do quickly is look at all the cooling devices that you have operating. All these air handling units on top of roofs are wasting energy as we speak. And they are in locations, they have permits to operate. So there you don't need to go through lengthy permits. You just need to think, can I use that waste heat as energy source for anything else? For hot water, for the building next door, for a district heating system, for a factory? And then you can actually really save significant amounts. We have done a rough back of the envelope calculation where we say one of our members has 60 gigawatts of cooling equipment installed. That means 72 gigawatts of waste heat as capacity. You multiply that by 3,000 hours and then you get what heat they waste to the environment. If heat was considered waste under waste legislation, it wouldn't be allowed. But just because we say, no, it's just a discharge to the environment, doesn't matter, it's okay. And so that's what you can do quickly and then plan for a decarbonized future. I think we have all the models at our disposal. We just need to act now.
Yep. So I realize that we're running short on time now. So what I'd like to do is just ask to go down the row and just a few kind of final words of whatever message you want to leave the audience with today, be it forward-looking, provocative area to focus on, whatever it is. So, Thomas, I don't know if you want to add anything on top of what you just said in terms of your 20 to 30 seconds of wisdom.
4 words: the heat pump accelerator we need in every national level, and we need technology clarity.
Okay, Guru, next.
Well, I would just like to add that, I mean, the market is there, the products are there, solutions are coming up. We just need to pull up our sleeves and start get working. And, I mean, being here today is really good. It's a great opportunity to talk to other with the same passion around this area. But more initiatives like this are important. And while we're not doing that, go and do the work.
Absolutely. Please.
Yes, and I would like to say the technology is here, it works, and its role in the future energy system can be extended. It can do even more. It can stabilize the grid instead of being a burden and things like that. So that is
yeah, thank you. And I'll mention, we didn't get into it, but I'll mention that R&D is quite an important piece of what you do. So that so it is also an important part we didn't quite get into because of time. Please.
I'd love to see, in an Irish context and in a European context, much greater emphasis on building skills in the sector. Certainly in Ireland, everybody wants their kids to go to university, and become a lawyer or a doctor. Actually, there are great careers, long-lasting careers in this type of work. So I would love to see more apprenticeships. I would love to see more technical places and university design courses that are around things like energy efficiency, building management, all of these areas. Because if those people, look, we can't solve our short-term kind of skills by apprenticeship programs because it'll take a while for the people to come through. So we've to do that we've to do many different parts to that. But if we're going to get resources into the sector, let's start now and make sure the universities, etc., are educating people for the sector.
It's a very important point.
That's
Nigel,
a good point. I've got a 23-year-old daughter. I'm going to tell her, get a job in energy efficiency. You can be just like me. She'll love it. She'll love it. We're hiring. So I got 5 words to finish off, and it's get banks in the room. Basta.
So we have bookends: energy efficiency accelerator, get banks in the room, and everything in between. Excellent. Well, so I'd like to ask the panelists to please stay here for the next small window. So I'd like to invite Dr. Odon de Buen, who is the Director General of CONUE, which is the Commission for the National Use of Energy Efficiency, up. I don't think Odon is that mic active? Okay. And Odon, if you could just, expand it back to the discussions of the day, so not just heat pumps, also electric motors. And could you comment on what this means for really kind of the broader international environment for emerging economies, for Mexico, from your perspective? What sorts of reflections can you share with us on the examples, the lessons, the recommendations you've heard today, please?
Okay. Good afternoon. Well, I come from Mexico, and we have a different context from what we have been talking about here, and I guess that's why they put on me the responsibility of representing emerging economies. But there are some general things that apply here. It's been said that energy efficiency has high potential, and it grows and grows as technology improves. It has a high return of investment. I mean, it is very clear. It's an opportunity for the user, but also I come from a country where there's subsidies for electricity use, and other countries in Europe. So it's also the advantage of the government, of the taxpayer. Of course, we need standards. In Mexico, I am very proud to say that we have standards, MEPs, and testing procedures for the products that represent 80% of consumption in residential sector. But we're an economy that is a manufacturing economy. Part of the drive to have the standards was becoming part of the North American economy. It is not something that could have been done easily. And we have a large market. So we can, this has sense because, well, the standard is not only the paper and the rules and whatever it says that has to be how it is tested. We need a system of a conformity assessment. At least that's the case in Mexico. We need to have the labs. We do have certification organizations. And to sell a product in Mexico, you have to have a certificate. So in the case of other countries, and I have worked in Central and South America, the thing is that they are small economies. They don't have a large enough market. They don't have their own manufacturing. So they can have the standard, but the problem is how can you assure that the standard is complied with? And that's where they have problems. And when you're gonna, okay, I'm gonna finance a refrigerator program in El Salvador. To make sure that the bank will accept it, that they won't accept the risk, is that you need to make sure that those products comply with the standard that assures performance, but also quality. Okay, I'm going to invest in something that I recover in 3 years, and I'm not sure it's going to be recovered in 3 years. We have that issue, for example, with solar water heaters. In emerging countries, in Mexico, we can do some research. There's some research done to improve the equipment. We do have manufacturers. Some equipment like air conditioners, they're mostly imported. And we do have substitution programs. We have good experience in that. And we have been successful. We have, as a result of our standards program that has been going on for 30 years, we have a higher level of total electricity savings from standards than China, Brazil, and or India. That has been said by the International Energy Agency. It is a policy that has been successful. We have 10 million appliances coming into the market every year, so it is reflected in that. Of course, there's the question of the deployment. We do have funds, ESCO-type funds, that give loans to people to exchange the equipment. But one issue there, and it is a question of policy, and we're looking at this right now in the context of Europe. The policy issue is well, I don't say it's no longer, but climate change is side by side by reduction of imports, of gas imports from Russia. There's a new challenge here. So the politicians have to decide on this. But of course, this is something that makes sense. The discussion on heat pumps is very interesting because there's a solution there, but there are a lot of issues to make this possible. And it goes beyond that because we have a challenge in this field, which is digitalization. I mean, you've been talking about the supply chain and the problems to assemble heat pumps, because heat pumps are not only mechanical, they also have electronic parts, and they're going to be connected to the internet, in the Internet of Things. So we do have a more complex systems, and in that also we have an issue of standards. How do we have standards of a refrigerator that has also a screen connected to the world? And yes, there's a policy issue, because you can see it in Mexico right now. The big policy issue is energy self-determination, that the energy that we have is enough for the country. Of course, this is an equation that has two parts, and energy efficiency is part of that, but also the question of social justice. And one thing about emerging countries is sometimes the problem is not energy efficiency, it's how do you bring the energy services to the people. And this is an opportunity to bring it more efficiently. And I have a study, I don't have it, that we have proven that energy efficiency has been able to increase energy services for the poorest of the Mexicans. And we have some data on that. Now, it is very interesting also in terms of compliance, talking about not only products, but of systems. I mean, that's a different story that a certificate for a product, but the question of systems, you need the people to design it, install it, maintain it, and that is a different issue in our context for many things related to energy efficiency. And we have three experiences in terms of motor exchange. One is very old, but I was part of the IDB, the Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, had an incentive program through this FIDE fund in Mexico, and they designed the project to give money to the end user, but at the end they gave the money to the companies that sold the motors, the distributors, because it was a lot easier to do it that way. One more recent, it was with the International Copper Association, where we had a learning network, Red de Aprendizaje. This from the German experience. And we had WEG, and we had about 3 manufacturers to be the technical advisors to a group of mining companies. And all of a sudden, they identified that it was very profitable to change large motors. They identified thousands of motors that they could change. And this was a social process. This is one question this is one matter that I heard, is the question of behavior. And we have been working for 9 years on energy management systems, which have a process, which have a standard, ISO 5001, but also the process, and to me it has been fascinating, it's a social process. And it's getting involved people inside a company to find the opportunities and to make a plan, invest, and continuously evaluate that. And I think it is in that context of the energy management system development that these opportunities come out, especially in industry, especially with the motors. So I do think I agree with the notion that human behavior is important. When I speak in public, I say energy efficiency is about two things: technology that is changing fast, it is increasing the possibility, but also it's social. It's social in the bigger way in terms of policy and politics. You know, how do I get the government to decide and put money into that? But also to have people involved individually, but also collectively, be it in a company through an energy management system or a movement to have energy efficiency become not principle, a driving force in policy in energy. So we need to drive trust of people in energy efficiency. That is done basically through standards, and we do have to mobilize people. And as I mentioned, there's several elements, and the policy environment changes. So sometimes you're justifying it for environmental reasons, and all of a sudden you have to justify it for other reasons. But in general, it is an advantage because we have many benefits of energy efficiency. So that would be my comments. I'm sorry they are a bit disorganized, but I don't understand what I write, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think in the interest of time, if the panelists don't mind staying in, we'll take a round of applause for everybody after Brian's closing remarks. I'd invite Brian to the stage to please share some closing remarks and words of wisdom with us.
Thanks, Edith. What I'd really like to do is give my 3 minutes to Odon so we can get a bit more of his wisdom, but maybe we'll just do that over a drink later on. Thank you for your wisdom and your shared thoughts, and thanks to all the panelists, and of course to Edith, Mel, and Kelly for the various sessions. I think this has been a great discussion. I haven't been here for all of it, but I've been here for some of it, and it exemplifies what we want to do at this conference, because we established this annual global conference on energy efficiency 7 years ago, and what we wanted to do with it is really foster a truly global conversation on energy efficiency that maybe brings together people that don't meet that often in terms of the range of countries, but also we involve ministers, senior officials, hands-on practitioners, people from business, people from banks, and really get them talking to each other, because we don't want this to be one of those conferences where, in summary, everybody's speech is efficiency is lovely. This is meant to be much more outcome oriented. It's about implementation, it's about action, it's about learning what people can do. And if you were here this morning, you heard me say that we want people to tell each other what's working, what isn't working, and and take that home. And we want to see action the very next day. People go home because they've learned something, they have a new idea, and they're going to think of what they can do with that. And if you travel by plane, you can think on the plane on the way home. We have some colleagues who are actually in the midst of cycling from Germany to here to join the conference, so they'll have a bit more time to think about it on their way home as well. And just listening to the last discussion, I want to say that we have 4 thematic discussions tomorrow, one on cooling, one on digitalization, one on finance, and one on consumers and people. And in a discussion that's meant to be relatively narrow, just on one technology, which is heat pumps, I heard all of those themes coming up again and again, which is really interesting. And you'll hear them all again tomorrow. And as well as those 4 thematic discussions, everything tomorrow, the plenaries, the ministerial discussions, all those parallel sessions are about implementation and action. And that's what I heard a lot of today. Real solutions, people talking about what works, people talking to each other about what they need from each other, and of course hearing from great doyens like Odon on what has worked and what hasn't worked over many years. Because energy efficiency takes time, it takes effort, it takes investment, and that's what we're here to talk about. So before we close, I also want to say that myself and a lot of colleagues are here. We want to hear from you directly as well. So come and talk to us. Tell us what you think we can do to help. Tell us what you've learned. If you're not a speaker, then just speak to us. We want to make sure we hear all the perspectives. If we don't manage to talk to you, just send us an email afterwards or send us a tweet. We'd love to engage, because we see ourselves as I would probably say I'm the least expert on energy efficiency in this room, but my job is to convene all of you and maybe take a bit of the credit for all your wisdom. So that's what I'm here to do. So, and I extend the same invitation to those joining us online. We really want to foster this conversation. We want to use these couple of days. And this conference in its 7th year has really grown into, the best part of a week. We've had colleagues here for a couple of days. Right now, there's a tour of about 40 journalists visiting some projects in the region. We have a number of ministers have already arrived. We have a reception this evening that, of course, you're all invited to. A number of meetings tomorrow. a dedicated ministerial session on Thursday, which we've never had before, putting ministers in a room, closing the door behind them, no press, no cameras, just talk to each other about, you know, how we can learn from each other, how we can get something done, and you'll be hearing more about that, and more study tours, more industry discussions. So it's turned into a whole set of meetings and events, like the side events today, other meetings are happening, and we're delighted with that because it really shows in 2022, we're ready to get back together again. We're ready to sit in a room and learn from each other. We're ready to join online as appropriate. And of course, we're very proud and delighted to be able to foster that discussion. So thank you to everybody for all of your great insights. And thank you all of you for joining us online and in the room. And as I say, just consider this an open invitation to continue to engage with us, with each other, with everybody here, so we can continue this global conversation. Thank you very much.